Have you ever crawled so far that the skin of your knees wore away to expose the thick, circular, triangular bones of your patellae? Are you annoyed with me because I chose to write patellae instead of just kneecaps? I am not a haughty camper who throws words around like a throng of ping-pong balls ricocheting off the walls of a padded cell. I just enjoy words and fancy how patellae, 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 patellae sounds like a song, and kneecaps, 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 kneecaps sounds like a machine gun. I choose to crawl instead of walk so that when I hit bottom, I don't have far to go. The corporate giant I work for does not pay much attention to me because in their world, my name is 97040. This cryptic designation sounds like the last 5 digits of an archaic telephone number from Peekskill, New York. I find this ironic because Peekskill is my birthplace, and this fact proves that my mom has my birth certificate on file. But no one can find my birth certificate to verify my Christian name because it is somewhere between superfluous pieces of paper that are overdue for shredding. In some cultures, a bridal couple's bed sheets are inspected by the groom's family to ascertain the bride's virginity. All a girl really needs is a stockpile of fake blood, and she can be a virgin for every one of her marriages. After all, who only gets married once these days? For 20 years, I worked with a largely female population in what I will define as a woman cave. There were a lot of creatives among us. What is a creative? Here is a list of some possible creatives. An artist who sees the world a little differently than others. An individual who does not fit into any box. And a leader who influences people through their intrinsic talents. One of our creatives once spoke to us about an article she read examining what the author identified as a dry run marriage. A dry run is a testing process where the effects of a possible failure are deliberately reduced. For example, an aerospace company may conduct a dry run test of a jet's new pilot ejection seat while the jet is parked on the ground, rather than while it is in flight. In the military, a dry run is practice in firing arms without using live ammunition. A dry run marriage is predestined to be short-term. In essence, it is a practice exercise that the bridal couple knows will end in divorce, so that they can move on to their real marriages. I just hope a dry run presidency does not end in a thermonuclear war, environmental apocalypse, or assassination, because from where I sit, the effects of a possible failure were not deliberately reduced for this test. I ask myself questions every day. Some of these inquiries are more serious than others. What does the neologism shits and giggles mean? To do something for shits and giggles is to do an activity just because you feel like it or because you have nothing to lose. It is written on the wall of a cave somewhere that this phrase is a more vulgar form of for kicks and giggles, which is probably a combination of the two phrases just for kicks and just for laughs, but with laughs being replaced with giggles. On the topic of shit, this brings me to another question I ask myself almost every day I work as a personal trainer at a local gym. Why do some of our members insist on using our complimentary white towels to wipe their behinds? What is more, why must they drop these dirty towels on the floor versus in the waste baskets we keep in each of the bathroom stalls? My colleagues and I used to think the role of our towels got changed every time there was no bath tissue available. But countless offenses done over a long period of time versus a short one proved that bath tissue deficiency was not the cause for this towel abuse. Is this behavior cultural? By this I mean, is cleaning one's butt with a towel a common practice for a particular group of people? Perhaps trading in one's bath tissue for a towel is trending on social media. Or are white towels asking for it, much like some assholes think a woman wearing sexy clothes is asking to be raped? What about a member of the president's cabinet who uses private charter and military jets to travel around the country at taxpayer expense? This work-related travel cost taxpayers about $400,000 for private charters and $500,000 in military airplane costs. What is more, nearly all of the trips were between cities where inexpensive commercial flights were also available. The offender, who shall remain nameless, serves in an administration that routinely calls for excessively severe spending cuts and a reduction in government waste. Is this a case of what is good for the average person does not apply to the average self-serving hypocrite? I heard on the news that at least 6 White House advisors sometimes use private email addresses to discuss White House matters. Officials are supposed to use government emails for their official duties so their conversations are available to the public and those conducting surveillance. But it is not unlawful for White House officials to use private email accounts as long as they forward work-related messages to their work accounts so they can be saved. How do we know for sure these White House officials deploying private email accounts are following through with this task? While I was walking to work, I saw a little girl fall, and as I helped her up, I said, "Whoopsie daisy." She turned to me and whispered, "My dad says that when he deletes emails he was supposed to forward to his account at work." Do you believe that many important political events or economic and social trends are the products of secret plots that are largely unknown to the general public? If you do, can we go on the wonder wheel? Because high up there in the air, you and I can sniff out the perpetrators and force them all to play football without helmets. I guess it doesn't matter whether the wrongdoers wear helmets or not, because the helmets don't render the brain injury-proof. Today, my memory traps information like a drain traps hair, but time has the upper hand regarding this condition. I might cross an avenue as wide as the River Nile and forget my own name after I get to the other side. Will I place my only son in a polka dot ark and conceal that festive chest in the trees by the side of the road so that he can be adopted by the president's daughter? My son talks to God, and his God is a smoldering weapon of mass destruction. Why did my son, God, and all the people neglect to read Niels Bohr's open letter to the United Nations? Bohr believed that the atomic bomb would alter the basic nature of international relations. When we placed a dreadful means of destruction in the hands of man, we presented our entire civilization with a most serious challenge. Would you say our world is in the hands of two egomaniacs on a power trip? It is hard to make a credible claim that a particular brain injury has caused a specific act of idiocy that has the propensity to end the world. But maybe the two leaders on trial in my semi-imaginary expose are an exception to this rule, and they played contact sports in their bare heads, and it caused memory loss, confusion, mood swings, and dementia. I do believe the world does not belong to us. We are only renting space until the next batch of humans and creatures grab the now proverbial reins. The probing question one might ask is, will the world be around when it's time to change this population landscape? Or will it have already gone kaboom? I heard a uterus knocking on my door and was not afraid, because it was only the size of a pair. Conflicts between reds and greens have existed for years, and these disputes helped create an atmosphere of anti-greenness in the color wheel. A wicked red spent a part of his youth in the warm area of the color wheel, where anti-greenness was very prevalent and highly encouraged. As a result, he may have been influenced by that environment's system of ideas. At the time when the first color wheel war broke out, a majority of financial institutions, banks, and large companies were controlled by greens. The wicked red blamed the loss of this war, the economic downfall of his color, and the bad decisions of his color's democratic government on green capitalism. The wicked red believed that greens had some conspiracy to control the world and that they would stab reds in the back whenever it would suit them. The wicked red and many of his cronies believed in the superiority of the red color and that greens were inferior to such an extent that they were non-colors. The wicked red felt that he would be doing the color wheel a favor by wiping out the green section. People who are red-green colorblind generally have difficulty distinguishing between reds, greens, browns, and oranges. They also commonly confuse different types of blue and purple hues. It was this small group of misfits who saved the greens from the reds because they couldn't imagine their world without them. I am hiding behind a curtain and watching in horror as Hitler practices a speech in the mirror. I am appalled because although I want to shove my fist down his throat, I admit that he is an excellent public speaker. He begins his address by not speaking at all for about 22 seconds. Then he slowly launches into his oration, carefully choosing his words in an almost timid manner. 3 to 5 minutes into the speech, Hitler expresses his passion, fury, intensity of hatred, and menace by turning up the volume of his voice. 15 minutes into the address, he sways slightly, gesturing with his hands and making different facial expressions to convey several moods with eyes gleaming and fingers spearing the air around him. While I am undercover, a psychiatrist approaches me and tells me that his royal cuckoo suffers from megalomania, is paranoid, hears voices, and experiences hallucinations. Not long after the psychiatrist slips away into the darkness, a psychologist sneaks behind the curtain and shares their views. The psychologist developed the opinions of the psychiatrist even further and adds that next to hysterical signs, Hitler shows all the classic symptoms of schizophrenia, including hypersensitivity, panic attacks, irrational jealousy, supremacy fantasies, delusions of grandeur, and belief in a messianic mission. Although the psychologist considers Hitler's condition somewhere between hysteria and schizophrenia, they also emphasize that he possesses considerable control over his pathological tendencies. Moreover, he deliberately utilizes his sickly inclination in order to stir up nationalist sentiments among the Germans and inflame their hatred against alleged persecutors. The collective diagnosis of these doctors sounds like a form of Holocaust denial to me. Let us play a game of good violence or bad violence. I will ask the questions, and anyone who is not talking to ghosts on their smartphones will answer. I am a teenage boy, and after witnessing my girlfriend's father beat her mother for the umpteenth time, I stab him in the back with a butcher knife. Good violence or bad violence? Now I am an American soldier making my way through the carnage on Omaha Beach. 3 truckloads of German infantry arrive, and the manpower odds are 3-1. These Germans are going to have to die, and I will be a large cog in the killing machine. Good violence or bad violence? An adult female cicada killer wasp paralyzes a cicada with her venomous sting. She then carries the cicada to a burrow, places it down, and lays an egg under its left or right second leg. The egg hatches, and the larvae eat the cicada while taking care to keep it alive. Once the larva has had its fill, it spins a cocoon in which it will change into an adult wasp. Good violence or bad violence? A paranoid schizophrenic who had not taken his antipsychotic medication for 6 months heard the voice of God tell him to kill his mother, sister, and sister's best friend with a hammer. He followed through because, after all, he got his orders from God. Good violence or bad violence? When Dachau concentration camp was liberated, an unknown number of American GIs lined 16 SS camp guards against a coal yard wall and executed them. Additional executions took place at Dachau's rail yard, at a guard tower, and at Worm Creek. In all, 37 to 39 SS personnel were put to death that day. Good violence or bad violence? White nationalists had long planned a demonstration over Charlottesville, Virginia's decision to remove a statue of Robert E. Lee. But the rally quickly exploded into racial mocking, pushing and shoving, and outright fighting. This prompted the governor to declare a state of emergency and the National Guard to join the police in clearing the area. But after the rally at a city park was diffused, a car bearing Ohio license plates plowed into a crowd of counter-demonstrators near the city's downtown mall, killing a 32-year-old woman and injuring some 34 others. Good violence or bad violence? An objective perspective is grounded in fact and is not influenced by personal feelings or bias. Subjective, on the other hand, means based on individual opinion or experience. How you play your game of good violence or bad violence depends on which perspective you choose, and is not the no-brainer it first seems. Being a human being takes a lot of responsibility. Are you up for it? He told me to think about my comfort and not to worry about my electric bill. But is he going to pay the utility company after they charge me for setting my air conditioner's thermostat on 70 degrees and running it for 8 hours? In truth, I really don't need to concern myself with my next electric bill, because I just saw a nuclear bomb fly by. Nowadays, they seem to be everywhere, because the devil is an ignoramus, lacks discretion, and has infiltrated the White House. While a repentant Mary Magdalene was gazing upon her reflection in the mirror, she told me that the devil was on holiday when the United States dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan. Mary also has a candle and skull and is going to burn the devil's new house down while he is sleeping on his backyard hammock. She will plant the skull under his pillow and uncover his plan to blame the Jews for kidnapping and murdering Christian children in order to use their blood as part of religious rituals. If I told you that over the past 24 days there were 29 opioid overdoses, would you think I was over-exaggerating? Drug overdoses are the leading cause of death of Americans under the age of 50, and 2/3 of those deaths are from opioids. When I take long walks on my timeline, I always dread 1942 and 1943 because all I can smell is Zyklon B. Then when I get to 1945, I am covered with radioactive dust and ash. Do you remember film strips? Film strips were an audio-visual aid used for training or educational purposes. Film strips combined a sound recording with a strip of still images on 35mm film and were an easy and inexpensive alternative to 16mm projector educational films. On average, a film strip's running time was between 10 and 20 minutes, and narration was provided by a 33 1/3 RPM record or compact cassette tape. When I take long walks on my timeline, the film strips from 1942 and 1943 wrap around my eyes, and the images from the Nazi death camps are stamped on my brain like a tattoo. When I pause on 1945, the film strip projects 2 graveyards with not even one tombstone standing. These images of absolute devastation are burned onto my skin like a pyrographer burns a pattern onto leather, and I continue my walk to the present day. It is at this point that I find the nearest mailbox, split myself into parts, and send these postcards to the devil so he can see the fire and fury he proclaims no one has. I am the book you read between the one on post-traumatic stress disorder and the other on cancer. Do you know anyone who believes it is the end of the world when their toilet is backed up? When the alarm for my carbon monoxide detector went off, I tossed it out the window because the sound gave me a headache, made me dizzy, and caused me to vomit. I have never met a clown I didn't like, nor have I recommended that a former politician run away from home and join the circus. I once knew a corpulent Catholic nun who enjoyed smoking big and beefy cigars while she played craps. Last night, I dreamed I was an attorney who pursued works of art belonging to Jewish families that were looted by the Nazis during World War II. Although I find this dream inspiring, I also find it odd. This is because when I was a teenager, I couldn't stop imagining that I was the frontman for a famous heavy metal band. If I owned a submarine, I would always be out at sea. If I lived on a farm, I would work the land morning, noon, and night in order to grow enough food to feed the hungry. The most difficult part of this task will be picking up where Mother Teresa left off, because the wind has blown all the dirt around and obscured her footprints. My road to serenity is paved with clones. I travel along it every day and learn how to maximize my usefulness from all of my selves. There are days that I feel like I am not getting anywhere, and when I look in the mirror, I see a 3-toed sloth. But when I blink my eyes 3 times, twirl around like a top twice, and tap my foot once, I see my heart breathe fire. It is at just that moment I understand that progress has more than one speed and cannot always be measured like one measures the length of their fingers.
Red Hots, get your Red Hots here. Red Hots, step right up and get your Red Hots here. Holocaust collectibles, get your Holocaust collectibles here. Step right up and get your personal items once owned by victims of Nazi genocide here.
Someone please stop me from hitting the road this summer in my battered Subaru with a broken air conditioner, because the heat will make me nutty, and this newly diagnosed insanity will transform me into a raging revenge machine. As far as the press is concerned, my cause has no meaning, because I am not the royal Hollywood elite or richer than a robber baron. I will not go down in history as a heroic woman in a sleek and shiny chariot who took down hatred like a bowling luminary takes down plastic-coated rock maple pins. My mission in an old green jalopy will be lost between the back pages of the complimentary newspapers found in plastic bags on driveways or stacked neatly next to the exits of retail stores. I have hit bottom before, but when you find what you've done for the preservation of humanity spread across the bed of a cat's litter box, the only place lower is hell. Does this back page value, the media stamps on my mission, really matter? Not very much, because I am not looking for recognition. I am hunting for justice. Personal items from victims of the Holocaust should not be called collectibles, nor should they be available for purchase on auction sites. These objects are not sports cards that you either trade or hope will increase in value someday. These effects were someone's shoes, someone's yarmulke, or someone's pajamas that they wore in a concentration camp. In what world is it okay to sell possessions like these on an auction site? In what world would a company not respond to the concerns of the community? The short answer here is, not my world. The Nazis stole these things, and now a merchant claims it is very important to have Holocaust artifacts on the market because it helps people to remember that terrible period of our past. Intimate belongings owned by Jews sent to Nazi death camps should be donated to museums and not sold by a dealer for their own gain. It is time to reclaim what is ours from the Nazis and their profiteers, and I am going rogue. One reason why elephants go rogue is when one or both of their tusks actually grow into the flesh of their cheek or jaw. As the pain worsens, they become a killer, taking everything before them in wild stampedes. My mom is always in a hurry, and she moves so fast that wall clocks appear the same as the wheels of cars driven by demons addicted to speed. I saw ants marching in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade and could not resist protecting them from the gigantic balloons formed in the likeness of black rubber galoshes. How many times have you seen a man mow down over 20 human beings with his car? When you witness such a thing, do you purchase an army tank loaded with more artillery than every physician's stockpile of tongue depressors combined and go after him? I am not a killer, but I have observed many unspeakable crimes in my lifetime that have brought on spells of selective memory loss. Sixth commandment? What sixth commandment? There will come a time when we call upon robots for cooking, housekeeping, child care, and sex. A couple of weeks ago, one of my colleagues recommended that I utilize the social media platform Twitter as a means to market and promote my art. Lately, I've been suffering from dream anxiety disorder, and these nightmares depict the same buoyant bluebird pecking on my skull as if it were a tree trunk. One of the most wondrous and unpredictable artists I know and admire uses postcards and the United States Postal Service to promote her performances and exhibitions. The greatest feeling on earth is finding one of her tangible visual treats nestled between all my bills and junk mail. I recognize and appreciate the value of social media. I also admit that I utilize the various fruits this tree of exponential growth yields. My nose is like Pinocchio's in that I have the necessary span to keep cutting it down without the fear of harming my face. Please pass me that daisy so I can participate in a match of do I or don't I. This game I call my life would be so much easier to play if I were an enormous balloon shaped like a hot dog and bun that got inflated for the sole purpose of spreading joy during the annual soft porn parade. How do you define disaster? Will you be ready to take on the role as your mother's mother? Do you think you are saving enough money for after you retire? What are you most afraid of dying from? What is the first word that comes to your mind after you see your paycheck stub? Or do you go up into your attic and scream more than one word at a volume just below the threshold of pain? When you learn that the CEO of your employer used the company plane to fly her family to a wedding, theme park, and beach resort, does it drive you to steal rolls of toilet paper, boxes of facial tissues, and refuse liners from the firm's utility closet? Are you a good liar? I admit that I'm very angry with the people who I see texting, gaming, and FaceTiming on their smartphones while they are at work. The question here is, do they believe that there is absolutely nothing wrong with their behavior? Where do you keep your mobile devices when you are driving? How high do you like the volume of these above-mentioned gadgets while you are deploying earbuds? I use curse words when I am suffering from a temporary spiritual collapse. Does this mean I am broken? Some broken things only require one person to put them back together. But there are other broken things that require many hands to complete repairs. A hen laid an egg and passed it on to me. I played God and painted the surface of the earth on the egg shell. I ran home to show this beautiful work of art to my mom. Along the way, a hungry fox tried to steal my egg. During our scuffle, the egg fell to the ground and exploded. I valued the outside of the egg, and the fox valued the inside. If we treasured the whole egg, we would have been more careful with it. Hate is contagious, and one of the greatest inventions of the 20th century was the tampon. Life is not a dream, and when I grow up, I don't want to be famous. I am currently watching two megalomaniacs waving nuclear weapons around as if they were their male erectile organs of copulation. The question here is, do I really need to hire an attorney to write my will? I once knew a man whose greatest fear was to die in a fire. I wonder if he is the same person building a bomb shelter near my home. Who is going to tell him that he doesn't have enough capital to build something comparable to the Cheyenne Mountain Complex? I used to see God in people. These experiences included individuals performing acts of goodness, selflessness, and grace. Now, I am on the hunt for the scoundrel who pulled the plug. The same species put the first man on the moon and built the first atomic bomb. The same species invented the printing press and initiated the ritual of burning books as a means of censorship. The same species wrote the Emancipation Proclamation and has used forms of control and manipulation to keep victims involved in the sex industry for their own profit. I am an alpha with no omega. I am a bottle of whiskey with a hairline crack. I am a kilo of ash disguised as black tar heroin. When someone asks for your name and contact information, tell them that you will write it on a piece of paper, slip it into a number 10 envelope, and mail it to their street address. They won't know what you mean, and to save their own embarrassment, will walk away. At just that moment, you will be free.